Financial Services.
Hey family, this is Cam Hill on the Cam Hill Show on A-Star TV. Thank you for tuning in. On today, A-Star TV is television programming that is dedicated to inform, entertain, educate, and empower the African American audience. Thank you. Today we have special guest Judson Robinson III. He is president and CEO of Houston Area Urban League. Hey Judson, how's it going, buddy?
Hey Cam, thanks for having me on, my friend.
What's going on, my friend? I tell you, I started reading everything about you, and I said to myself, I got to start over. I haven't done a thing.
Stick around long enough, you'll catch up.
I love it. 30 years in public service. Love that part. And then Bachelor's of Arts, Fisk University, City Council member, Houston City Council member.
Right.
Man, love that.
Yeah, lots of careers there, lots of different things. Worked with now Senator Sylvia Garcia. I was her chief of staff for a while there, working at the county. And she was at precinct 2. And great experience there, working with a really strong leader.
Yes.
I enjoyed that. I've been a small business person for a number of years. I'm a realtor. In this life, everybody's got a little side hustle. I've had, probably along the way. So, but all of them, hopefully, get a chance to make an impact and hopefully make someone's life a little bit better, including my own. So, nothing wrong with that.
I love that part. I love the fact, first of all, Houston Area Urban League. Man, you all impact the community so much in every single aspect that I've seen, and especially now with the George Floyd situation. You've really done so much for the community.
Well, thank you. It's it's a privilege every day to get to work on behalf of those that we serve.
Yes.
Because the Urban League was really formed to help African Americans kind of enter the mainstream, and so it really drew a lot of attention to our work because we are, not only advocating to prevent situations like George Floyd from ever occurring, but also making sure that we're doing the programmatic side to ensure that a person, has a job, to ensure that they have a place to stay, to ensure that if they want to start a business, they get the tools to do that. So oftentimes we find ourselves in these situations that had it not been for the safety of your own home or having that you can be at on a daily basis. You find yourselves in these situations where you run into bad people, and that was George's issue that day, and so the whole world took notice just due to the passion of how all that transpired, and I guess kind of the addition of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and just the countless other numbers of people that have been so negatively impacted by police that it made us all say, wait a minute, hold on. We're starting to see, that this is a clear disruption of the way that police ought to work with people. This is not what it's supposed to be. This is not protect and serve. This is clearly something different. And so I think once people saw enough of that back-to-back video, proof, stories we've been telling for centuries is not something we make up. It is, in fact, the life that as we have known it. And because, again, we have social media and great shows like yours and others, and people have access to these devices that we can work from. We can capture real-time video showing what's happening in the world. It just changes the paradigm.
It really does. I love what you say about changing the paradigm because of the fact that it's so many that have not been filmed before that came before this. And even now, a lot has not been filmed, before. But now that this has come out, now you hear more stories of what's happening all over the world, really.
Yeah, this was a young 17-year-old girl who had the courage
Yes.
to continue to film the situation as it was occurring, in spite of the looks that she was getting from law enforcement, and in spite of what risk potentially she was putting herself at. And thank God for her, because it allowed us to really, become emotionally attached to a situation that hopefully, as George said, I want to change the world. So hopefully we give him that last wish, that we stay on the forefront of this fight so that we can in fact change the world.
I agree with what you're saying because also legislation. I know you all are doing some things on legislation right now, working on it, trying to change laws, and that's the thing that I see that has to be changed at this point.
Yeah, and there's different versions of what that looks like.
Yes.
There's different variations of how strong, uh, how many teeth do we need to have in this legislation. There are some that really want to look at race as a part of the problem, and there are other legislation that does not. But the Justice in Policing Act is intended to make sure that we look at things like racial profiling, we look at chokeholds, we look at the language that is for so long uh, protected police officers in terms of immunity. Making sure that we have language that says something similar, but doesn't give the leverage that law enforcement has had for so long because of
Yes.
the language itself. That's key, and that's critical, and that's where like you said, policy comes in. Our lawyers come in to help rewrite language that's clear, and it's understood that if you do what we saw happen, that there's not language that protects you. Because if that were you or I doing that to an individual, we would not be protected. Just because you wear a badge and a gun doesn't mean that you should.
Absolutely. I truly, truly agree with that. I know at one time there was a legislation that was on the table. It was called a lynching law. And that law in itself, in 2018, it had not passed as of yet because there was a rebuttal about several things, but that was part of this as we can see it, but it never passed at the time.
And that, when you talk about that, Cam, and people say, well, why do I need to participate in the census? Not to take us off track, but all this stuff is really kind of related, right? So when you
Yes,
see civic leaders saying it's important that you fill out the census, well, it's important, yeah, because you want a new school and a bridge and all that. But you also want to make sure that you have representation in your state and federal houses, right? So that when you said it didn't pass in 2018, perhaps if you had enough people who felt like we do about
yes,
lynching, and it probably would have passed. So
yes.
if you don't do something as simple as filling out the census, then you really lose that opportunity for representation that you're deserving of at the appropriate state and federal levels.
I'm so glad you mentioned census, especially at this time, because we're so, I guess, engrossed in COVID and protesting and other things, but we haven't really pushed census and what that really means in a 10-year aspect. Let's talk about census. I'm glad you spoke about that. And what does it mean to each person? What does the census really mean?
Census is a count of the number of people that live in a geographic area.
Yes.
And it's real simple. So when you look at the density, the number of people that live in a geographic area, then you can determine how much resource needs to be placed in that area. But you can only get the resources based upon ensuring that everyone has been counted. So if we need more WIC centers, if we need food stamps, if we need, again, roads, bridges, libraries, cops, whatever the case may be, they're going to look at, do you have 50 people that live in that area or 500 people that live in that area? because that's going to determine the resources that are required to make sure you have a well-maintained society in that given area, right? So it's really important. If you don't have enough cops, if you don't have enough, maybe you do have enough cops, but if you don't have enough roads or streets or bridges or schools or post offices, all those things impact our quality of life, right? So it takes about 10 minutes. I filled mine out about a month ago to complete the. You can do it online, or you can wait for the paper ballot. I understand they'll be soon sending out people to knock on your door, but you can avoid that by simply, going online and filling it out. And again, it makes such a difference, and it makes it so much easier for us to avoid so many of these fights that we have today. Because when the numbers are there, and again, like you said, it's only done every 10 years. When the numbers are there, then the resources follow. And if you don't provide the numbers, you can't have the resources. So when you don't have the resources, you then begin to fight.
Right.
But it's so much easier if you just simply have the math behind you. It really is.
Absolutely. Statistically, they said about 10 years ago when it first filled out, African Americans, it was only 900,000 here in Houston that filled out the census. And those are the numbers they went off of to do the grocery stores, like you were saying, post offices, police stations, fire departments. And we already know that 900,000, it was many, many more than 900,000, but many people said, we do not want them in our business. Let's talk about that part.
There's a group, I must salute the AJC. We're finding that when we work together with other organizations, we have a lot more impact.
Yes.
So we've reached the NAACP and the Black Chamber, and we're trying to form some closer alliances. But one of the things that we did with the AJC and a lot of other organizations is we formed this thing called the Community of Conscience. So you may have seen a little PSA that we did not too long ago where we're in black shirts and talking about we're talking about justice and that we're all in this together.
Right.
And it stemmed from a white female who was walking in front of an Asian-owned business, and she, it went viral. I think she cursed the lady out and told her to go back to her country, and the whole bit. And we've got to realize that we are, in fact, all in this together. When blacks work with whites and whites work with browns, and we all kind of come together for the common good of mankind, and all wanting fairness, justice, equality, equity, empathy. These are all human things that we should all be able to easily grasp. We shouldn't be judged by the color of our skin or our language or any of those other things that we view as opportunities to separate us. So, I think your point is well made. It's a great topic. I think that the American population is most interested in having this discussion right now. And I say American population, but it's actually going across the world. I think George Floyd's death was protested on 9 continents. So people, we have an inner right and desire for the American doctrine of we're all created equal, and we should all have access to all the rights and privileges that we as Americans are entitled to. And my God, if you can't have justice, then it really sends a bad message that we have a hypocritical document that we all believe in.
Yes.
And if it's not state approved, then why would you have it as what the American document of justice and freedom and equality is supposed to really be all about?
I love what you're just saying. Also, the other thing, Maine, is voting. As we have seen in the past about voting and what it really means to us in voting, local voting as well as national voting. Let's talk about that part, about voting.
Yeah. Voting has always been kind of our stronghold. In recent years, we've always been able to count on the black vote and
Yes.
that having such a huge tipping point in the win or the loss of an election. So when African Americans turn out, typically those issues that we are fighting for, if we turn out, typically even those issues, we'll win those elections. When we don't, chances are we won't because
Right.
we're allowing folks to find more and more ways to pick off a few votes here and there. And as elections become closer, it's really important that we don't discourage voting, that we don't put in false impediments in place, that we don't create stories about people needing identification, etc.,
Yes.
because perhaps they're fraudulent or they're not Americans. They're not. We've never had any evidence of that to speak of, and yet and still we allow those arguments to be ones that make a difference in elections. So again, the census is tied to this. Voting is tied to the census. Number of polling locations that you have in a given area. All that's tied to the number of people that supposedly live in that area. So
Yes.
you know, just got to be. And I thank you for this show again. You've got to be civically engaged. You
Yes.
know, it's a very small requirement as a civilian in America to simply do your part civically to ensure that everyone receives what they're entitled to as Americans.
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with also local voting. You were a past city council member, position 5, and you have seen it up close about voting and how it really impacts us as a people, even very definitely locally, and also judges. Many of us don't know that you elect judges.
And judges are so important.
Yes,
These are people that are making huge decisions
yes,
about our state of affairs. So, having again people that reflect the thoughts and ideas of people like yourself,
yes,
all all that's within your grasp, all that's in your power. It's about, as we just stated, you've got to go vote. You've got to, show up at the polls. We saw those folks at Texas Southern University the other day waiting in line for hours because
yes,
it means so much. And the judges are the ones that's deciding on our rights, the ability to make decisions about things that are important for our families and our future. So, if in fact we're not researching who these people are and their
yes,
backgrounds, their their past history as practices, that's why when we look at Supreme Court justices, looking at the records of people is just so
right.
very important because what you've done in the past often is a clear indication of what you'll do in the future.
Absolutely. I love what you just said because they've been trying to do things differently now instead of doing the straight Democratic vote like we used to do. We just pull a lever and we just put Democrat and it was just straight Democrat or straight Republican. Did some changes there, always something, either changing of the locations where you had voting locations. They were closing them, I remember, without people knowing about them. The IDs, I had a lot of people to call me, Cam, we're here, and they're asking for all of this other identification. I thought you said we could just bring our own IDs, just things like that as they were going on the election day.
Right. I mean, but it's subtle changes like
Yes,
that that makes a big difference. I understand now you can vote at any polling location
yeah,
on election. That's a new rule. It took people who we want to put in office to make decisions like that. So again, if you're worried about voter ID, go vote because we can get people in office who
yes,
maybe feel different than the current leadership that thinks that voter ID is a big deal. It's not a big deal. We've been voting for centuries without having to worry about proper identification.
yes,
Many of our people don't even have the necessary ID.
right.
And the places that you go to get the ID, they might be beyond your ability to travel to. A lot of our
Mm-hmm.
folks, they stopped getting renewed driver's license and things of that nature. So again, we've got to be aware, we've got to be listening, we've got to be paying attention. As young people say, we got to be woke because the sophistication of discrimination these days is far beyond what anyone would ever imagine. It seems like it's harmless on the surface, but it's very, very orchestrated in terms of ways to make sure that people win elections that people want to win.
That sounds great. We're going to pause right there, and we'll be right back on the Cam Hill Show.
We'll be right back to the Cam Hill Show after these messages.
Houston's only Cadillac to your door dealer, Ron Carter Cadillac, delivers test drives to your home or office. For a limited time, get $16,000 off all in-stock Cadillac 2019 XT5 crossovers and $19,000 off all in-stock 2019 CT6 sedans. Or experience the first ever 2020 Cadillac XT6 Premium Luxury Collection, only $519 with $1 down for 39 months lease. Or purchase and receive 0.9% APR for 72 months with no payments until November. RonCarterCadillac.com.
When it comes to protecting yourself and your partners, all the information out there can be overwhelming. Visit our website. We are a free and confidential service striving to help you stay informed and stay notified. We are committed to a healthy Houston.
Houston's only Cadillac to your door dealer, Ron Carter Cadillac, delivers test drives to your home or office. Drive the new 2020 Cadillac XT4, only $399 a month, or the new 2020 XT5, only $429 a month, both for 39 months lease with just $1 down. Or purchase the XT4 or XT5 and enjoy 0.9% APR for 72 months with no payments until November. RonCarterCadillac.com.
Our story begins more than 60 years ago, inside an abandoned chicken coop, where our founder discovered a retired teacher living, no home, no health care. So she said no to this injustice, and yes to transforming lives. It's this drive, this compassion that inspired AARP. Today we empower people to choose how they live as they age. We advocate for health and financial security. We strengthen communities everywhere. We are AARP, creating real possibilities.
And now back to the Cam Hill Show.
Hey, this is Cam Hill on the Cam Hill Show on A-Star TV. We are here with my friend Judson Robinson III, President and CEO of Houston Area Urban League. Hey, my friend, we're back. We were just discussing just a little bit about voting. We've talked about census. We've talked about a lot of things. People are now asking Judson about the coronavirus. They're seeing people with no masks, no gloves, just going all around and just back to normal. And really thinking or feeling that, hey, it's post-coronavirus. It's not.
It's not. We've got over, 2 million people that have died. There are over 2 million cases in the U.S. right now. That's crazy when you think about it.
Yes.
116,000 of those folks have actually died.
Yes.
We thought the president said we wouldn't even get to maybe 75, 85,000 people. And now we're headed towards 200,000.
Yes.
It's unfortunate that we haven't really figured out a way to ensure that as we try to restart the economy, that we're also finding ways to ensure that we do it safely.
Yes.
I think the government is doing right now is completely irresponsible.
Yes.
We have 2,000 people that have died in Texas. And the sad thing, Cam, is, I've got to go to a funeral next week, and we won't be able to have the traditional funeral.
Right.
We'll have to send our cars.
Yes.
We're our most vulnerable population, our seniors. They're dying in these nursing homes, and people can't even come in to say goodbye.
Right.
So more than just numbers. It's the way and manner in which this is happening. So, to be insensitive to the impact it's having on all people, but especially, our seniors and we won't even begin to talk about the disparities when we talk about African Americans and Latinos that are dying
Right.
at higher rates than others. It's ridiculous.
I totally, totally agree. It touches my heart each and every time. I'm telling you, as we're looking at it, 2,000 a day of new cases I was reading. Each and every day, it's over 2,000 people a day that are contracting this virus. And also, it's just, like you said, the disparities amongst us. When we get to the hospital, we can't be with loved ones. When they go back, they have to go alone. And if someone is on a respirator or if they're very sick, they can't really tell what's going on around them. That's my concern, that nobody can be with them, but I understand that part too.
Yeah, 70% of the people, I think it was a story back in April,
Yes.
in Chicago, like 70% of the people that have died were African Americans. Milwaukee, I think they have a very small population of
Yes.
like 20, 26% African
Mm-hmm.
Americans, but people that are passed are African Americans. We don't know what's really happening in Texas because the
We don't.
governor did not mandate that we track race and ethnicity. So we don't really know the real picture of what's happening here, but I can tell you that the kinds of jobs that black folks have in Milwaukee and Chicago are the same types of jobs that we have here in Houston, Texas. So if the job is what's causing people to have these high levels of contact, the grocery workers, the bus drivers, the people that handle, kind of this hand-to-hand type of job, then that's certainly our people.
Yes.
We're not folks that have the kinds of jobs where we work in the high rises, we work in
Yes.
the big offices. For the most part, I think only 1 in 5 of us can actually work from home. So that's a different story in other communities. And so as we begin to have these discussions about race, it's important to lay all the data out so that we can begin to diagnose how do we avoid these trends from continuing. So if we don't have the kind of jobs that allow us to work from home, then that means that our education system is failing.
Yes.
And again, it all ties back to, census. Do we have enough schools? Do we have enough quality teachers? Do we have enough? Again, we have to look at this in a holistic fashion. Everything that we've talked about thus far is interconnected. The coronavirus is one of those, hopefully another eye-opening thing, much like George Floyd, that
Yes.
causes us to pause and really do a little self-examination of where are our priorities as a nation.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Also, the other thing too is that, yes, we know the economy has to open up, but the safety part of the people is at stake.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not much more priceless than human life. You
Yes.
know, um, our family members, and you just have to kind of wonder a little bit, okay, well, then if the data is showing that African Americans and Latinos are more prone to contract the virus and, of course, also to die of it, but we're continuing to expand the openings, then what does that really indirectly say about our concern for the populations most affected? I mean, you have to ask that question. And we have to, again, I think Sean Theory, our state rep, has put together an emergency task force to kind of look at issues like this. But it really is one that we cannot sweep under the table and say, well, it's just the cost of doing business. Well, maybe it is for you, but, I've known at least 5 people that have passed of the coronavirus. I was in my grocery store the other day and speaking to a neighbor who happened not to be African American. She said, I don't know anyone that's passed of the virus. That's a question that we need to have. If you're
Yes.
not black and you're not seeing people die, then why is that? Why does that make it okay?
Right.
when African Latinos are passing at a much greater rate.
Yes. I want to mention one person that we know has passed. Want to give prayers to his family, which is, and he impacted my life and for all of my life that I've been here in Houston, Pastor Manson Johnson. And I wanted to say prayers to the family, but him going in and him impacting Houston as he has, Pastor Holman Street, all of those years. Judson, I know you know what he did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he was a huge, he was a huge institution in this city.
Yes.
And we look at some of the collective knowledge of people that when they passed, that knowledge and that database of assets that they had
Yes.
passed with them in many cases. So it's more than just a minister died in
Yes.
Houston.
Yes.
This was a place we could go to help get stuff done.
Exactly.
Right? So it
Exactly.
makes it. I mean, look at the risk that our Congress people are putting themselves at right now to help others. I mean, if we, God forbid something happened to them, but my goodness, it means so much when we lose people of having to interface with people as much as we're currently seeing many of them choose to do. It's a little frightening.
It does. I mean, when you see the city council members out there on the front line, distributing food, giving out water, doing there for testing, they're putting themselves and their family, for the sake of others.
That's right. That's right. And if something were to happen to them, it's a big deal because
Yes.
those people have a wealth of knowledge. They have a history of community service. They have tremendous contacts. They have access to things that, we can call them and ask them to help us with.
Yes.
And so again, when they can't be on the battlefield, those of us who need each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. With this, what do you think we need to do about the coronavirus other than the vaccine that I know that they're working on or some people are working on? What do you think we need to be doing on a consistent basis?
Well, I think the things that we know to do
Yes.
are to be masked up. That's important. To make sure that we're socially distanced.
Yes.
We've got research that shows, that helps. We've got to support our scientists to make sure that, we get a vaccine as quickly as possible. And once that vaccine is available, that we've already thought about what do we do to ensure that the people who are most vulnerable have access
Yes.
to that vaccine as quickly as possible. We've got to think long and hard about our schools and how we're educating our children. We cannot run the risk of putting each other in harm's way.
Yes.
I would not want the job that some have that are working so closely with this, but I will say that the things that we know to do, we must do. Here at the Urban League, we have staggered work hours. The building, we're not forcing anyone to come to work
Yes.
at this stage. There's just, all these people that work here are important. They're helping people to get a job. They're helping people to acquire a home or to preserve the existing home that they have. They're helping them start a business. They're helping them to learn to read. I can't afford to run the risk of putting anybody in jeopardy. So I think that as employers, we have to continue to put pressure on our government to support the lost wages that we have, the lost revenue that we have. But life matters just so much. So let's do all that we can to be safe and to be smart about our safety. But at the same time, let's make sure that we're being empathetic and not forced.
Absolutely. I want to also, let's reiterate that you do not have to have the symptoms to take the test. And there are testing sites all over.
And that's one of the great things I must say that some of the pressure that we placed on the governor's office, they have responded. There are more sites being opened up
Yes.
that you can walk up to, that you can drive up to. Of course, there's no charge; they're all free of charge. I've had my tests. I always kind of challenge my staff to make sure they get their tests because it's important that when I go home at night, I know that I'm not infected, and I know that other people that I'm encountering, they can trust that they're not going to catch it from me. So it's one of those things where we can again become civically engaged, do our part as citizens of the world, and go get the test. The test took me. I drove to Del Mar Stadium. It took. There were 7 cars in the line.
Wow.
I was in and out of there in 20 minutes. The test didn't hurt at all. Now,
Right.
understand there are different tests. Some are more comfortable than others. But mine was very simple. I was handed a swab. I was told to break it in half. I moved the swab inside my nostril for a few seconds and then held it each side. And then I dropped the 2 swabs, the broken swabs, into a solution, handed it back to the official, and that was that. In a week, I got a phone call that said I had no coronavirus and answered every question I had, and life moved on.
So that's good to know. It's not that you go all the way up your nose to your brain. That's what we.
I did try to give a good place did not do that, so I kind of made an effort to go to that particular one.
Look, we're so glad to know that part. I took the test, same thing, did the same aspect. Didn't feel a thing like that. Nothing, nothing, nothing. I want to talk to you about the fact, and let's tell our listeners about the Houston Area Urban League and all of your programs that you have. You have so many programs that people don't know about. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful that as we move forward with funders, that they
Yes.
begin to realize the importance of allowing us to tell the story more effectively.
Yes.
People are always happy to help with the actual program itself, but sometimes the marketing that goes along with it to make sure that we're doing shows like this and others.
Right.
They're some are not, some are not. I'm not always just an honored guest. Sometimes they want my resources as well as all of my great information, right? So we have to be in a position to to pay for that, to do that from time to time. But yeah, the Urban League's been around since the early 1900s, 1910.
Yes.
It was organized so that people who were moving from the rural southern Jim Crow states towards the northern states, where there were jobs and opportunity and a lot less Jim Crow, they wanted to make sure that once they got there, that they had access to training, information about where to live, how to enroll in a school. They wanted to urbanize people.
Yes.
And so a biracial group of civic leaders of the time came together to really look at something that was maybe considered a problem by others, where you had all these poor people who were not very well trained or skilled, and said, how can we help to make sure that those people become assets in our community as opposed to liabilities? And so the Urban League was formed to make sure that people could get the training that they needed. They could find a hospital to go to if they were sick. They could find a neighborhood they could live in a sense of decent, affordable. Those were things that were important to everyone, but especially to African Americans, since they came there with really nothing. So the Urban League was formed. It proved to be a model that made a lot of sense. And so that model moved across the nation. And so by 1967, 68, the discussion in Houston was, how do we make sure that African Americans in Houston also have access to these opportunities? And people are always surprised when I tell them this, but it was Gerald Hines. Everyone in Houston's been to the Galleria. Gerald Hines was the developer of the Galleria. Gerald Hines was the visionary behind bringing an urban league to Houston, Texas. People they're always shocked by that. But he understood the importance of the investment in people. And
Right.
what could we do to make sure that all of the civil unrest that was taking place across the country in the late 60s, how could we diminish the likelihood of that happening here in Houston? So he got up together with other civil rights leaders and business leaders here in the city. My grandfather was one at the time. Quentin Meese was one at the time. Louis Galar was one at the time. Many, many others. And if I go on naming names, we'll be here all day. But people back in those days, they really cared. And we had a very strong business community back in the early days. And of course, the white community had to work with us from time to time to get a lot of things done. Many people didn't know about how we ensured that in Houston we didn't have the big race riots and all those other things that we hear so much about in other cities.
Right.
And that's a whole nother story, Cam, for a whole nother time. But these weren't uncommon friends. These were people that came together from time to time to deal with issues. And so Urban League was formed. The initial program was housing, helping to make sure that people could get affordable housing. But over time, it spread to job training, workforce development, educational and youth programs, entrepreneurship training. So today we touch some 10,000 people either by a phone call or actual intensive training. But they actually come into the Urban League, they receive the support and help that they need at no charge. The only thing I think that we charge for is the first time homebuyers class, and it costs $25. But when you leave that class, you're going to get down payment assistance in the thousands of dollars. It's worth the $20. It's probably the best deal in town. But once you get that class, you get your certification, you're now ready to go buy your home. If you need to repair your credit first, we go through that process, help you get your financials together, teach you about budgeting, so that you understand needs versus wants. You need to get a better job. We can help you get a certified credential that you can use anywhere in the continental U.S. That allows you to work a job that's going to pay a living wage, not just a low-income job, that'll help you to provide for yourself and your family. Starting businesses, we've had so many businesses that have started here in Houston. We had 700 plus folks go through our course in 2019. And when you talk about, okay, I'm now self-sufficient. I've hired a person. I think we had 243 full or part-time positions. You look at making, let's say $18,000 a year. That's an economic impact of over $4 million to the local economy. So I always tell our business partners and our funders that this isn't about just the Urban League. This is about the city of Houston. So when the city has, people buying homes, that's an economic impact.
Mm-hmm.
When people are starting business, hiring people, that's an economic impact. When people are graduating high school and going to college, that's an eventual economic impact to our city. So I encourage people to go to the website and see what all we're doing. It's just way too much to really talk about and explain, but I appreciate, again, your show, hopefully exposing many, many people to what we do. We were hopeful to get the National Urban League Conference coming to Houston. Of course, coronavirus has turned all of our lives upside down. It certainly turned upside down many conferences that were scheduled to come to Houston. But this was going to be our opportunity to really tell the story about what we're doing in Houston and the importance of it all. So, I hope that you'll go to the website. I hope you'll support us. The revenue that we hope to raise, we'll find a way to get there. But certainly, we were going to tell the story, like you suggested.
Absolutely.
People need to know. We certainly want to have that budget. So we'll just have to find it a different way now.
That sounds great. Let's take a break real quick. We're going to take a break on the Cam Hill Show on A-Star TV. Be right back.
We'll be right back to the Cam Hill Show after these messages.
When it comes to protecting yourself and your partners, all the information out there can be overwhelming. Visit our website. We are a free and confidential service striving to help you stay informed and stay notified. We are committed to a healthy Houston.
Houston's only Cadillac to your door dealer, Ron Carter Cadillac, delivers test drives to your home or office. Drive the new 2020 Cadillac XT4, only $399 a month, or the new 2020 XT5, only $429 a month, both for 39 months lease with just $1 down. Or purchase the XT4 or XT5 and enjoy 0.9% APR for 72 months with no payments until November. RonCarterCadillac.com.
Our story begins more than 60 years ago, inside an abandoned chicken coop, where our founder discovered a retired teacher living. No home, no health care. So she said no to this injustice, and yes to transforming lives. It's this drive, this compassion that inspired AARP. Today we empower people to choose how they live as they age. We advocate for health and financial security. We strengthen communities everywhere. We are AARP, creating real possibilities.
Houston's only Cadillac to your door dealer, Ron Carter Cadillac, delivers test drives to your home or office. For a limited time, get $16,000 off all in-stock Cadillac 2019 XT5 crossovers and $19,000 off all in-stock 2019 CT6 sedans. Or experience the first ever 2020 Cadillac XT6 Premium Luxury Collection, only $519 with $1 down for 39 months lease. Or purchase and receive 0.9% APR for 72 months with no payments until November. RonCarterCadillac.com.
And now back to the Cam Hill Show.
Hey, welcome back to the Cam Hill Show on A-Star TV. My special guest on today is Judson Robinson III, President and CEO of Houston Area Urban League. Hey, my friend, we are back.
All right.
I love it. I love it. We were just talking about what the Houston Area Urban League does, all of your programs. You have so many. We were just talking about the fact that you can get work on housing, your mortgages, credit there, especially sure. Now that the interest rate is so low. We both are realtors, so we kind of we love that part, the low of the interest rates, and it gives you more house. You can get more house that way.
Absolutely, yeah. We had almost 300 people that came through the class last year.
Yes.
And, several of them bought a home. Homes were on average, about $239,000 a piece. Again, it matters to Houston when people can go through the class, get the trainings. Many dozens of them bought a home. And so again, once you got the house, Cam, you got to get the washer dryer, you got to get the refrigerator.
No, the furniture.
So it's about strengthening our economy here locally and in the part of the American dream. So, we're honored to have the opportunity to help people go through that process. I don't know about you, but when I bought my first home, they just put all these stacks of paper.
Oh my God! Yes.
And I had to trust that, what I was going through was what everybody else had gone through.
Right.
These people, but it's really a wonderful thing to go through a class and they teach you about insurance. They teach you about your homeowners association. And they teach you about all of the bylaws that you have to be familiar with. They teach you about, principal and interest and insurance and all those different things that, you want to go into your closing as informed as possible. And that's what these classes allow you to do. So, again, for a $25 investment, it's a tremendous, even if you're not ready to buy a home, just to spend $25 and learn about what that process looks like. A lot of folks will come into us and they've got to repair credit. So, we go through that journey with them. It's not a 30-day, 60-day deal. It might be a year or two. But when that person finally gets that home, they're sending pictures, they're having parties, they're so excited. But they had kind of a hand to hold as they walk through that journey. And we really kind of view the Urban League as that kind of agency so that, when you're ready for your job or you're ready for your your home? Are you ready to start a business? Learn more about avoiding diabetes and all the other issues that we have. We have programs and people that are versed in those spaces. So you can tap in. If you have a question about anything in life, really, you can tap in. We have HUD certified case managers that are disaster specialists. So
Yes.
for all of us who've been through Harvey and Katrina and Ike and Allison and all that, there are certain things that people are entitled to under a disaster declaration
Yes.
that we can help with, right? We're now in the process of helping people with, offsetting their rental costs and things of that nature. We're working with the Great Eastern Community Foundation, so we've been given a small grant to ensure that people, have access to those resources. There's certain qualifiers, of course, but I mean, it doesn't hurt to call and
Yes.
find out what we can do.
Yes.
And the other thing is that if we don't do it, we know who does. So,
Yes.
we act as navigators for the community so that you can find the right agency or entity that can help address your issue. And you might not always like the answer because again, it might be more of a journey than you were anticipating. But
Right.
at least you know. So
Exactly.
that's important.
Exactly. The other thing is you mentioned it, and we'll briefly talk about it. About jobs. 40 million people unemployed, and you all have things there available for people if they don't have a job.
Yeah, true. I mean, a big part of the job is about, how you present yourself.
Yes.
Our people don't get that opportunity often to practice, to rehearse, to know what a resume needs to look
Yes.
like. We do a workforce orientation every Wednesday. You just call the main number and sign yourself up, or go online and you can find out more about, helping to get the resume ready. And then, of course, we have these classes that you could actually take that will give you a credential that will allow you to, again, go to work for someone. We
Yes.
had some people that went through our program last year. Many of them walk away with a $22 to $24 an hour job.
Yes.
That's a pretty good annual salary.
Absolutely.
Someone that they $1,000 a year. So, you have to be dedicated. You've got to put the time and energy into the training courses. But that's again where the partners are so important because if we can get the training credentials and the commitment on the back end from the employer that once we get a person certified and trained, that they will hire them, you really can't beat that. But we do all that. We set up the actual interview
Yes.
as well at the
Mm-hmm.
of the case class. So you get that as well. So the matchmaking takes place, and again, we're just here to try to help. As long as you're willing to put forth the effort, chances are we can have a match made in heaven and make sure you get what you need.
I am so glad about that. And you have some more. Let's talk about a little bit about some of the other services that you have.
So we also have an education department. The
Yes.
education department works real hard with several schools in the Worthing feeder pattern. The Worthing feeder pattern is one of the most challenged feeder patterns in the country. And we
Yes.
chose that feeder pattern because we wanted to help those kids who are least likely to have access to some of the things we provide. We provided, I think, 6 of our kids in this graduating class, got a scholarship this year
Yes.
of $34,000. So again, making sure that they have access to these opportunities is very important.
Mm-hmm.
But making sure books and access to reading is things that we have to be able to provide for them.
Absolutely. Let's give the information of how do people get in touch with you? How do we look up the Urban League and other programs that you have?
So you can find us online at www.haul.org. That's www.haul.org. And of course, our phone number is 713-393-8255. 8700, 713-393-8700.
Absolutely. Let's also talk about some upcoming events that you have.
Well, the events calendar is ongoing. There's always something. Tomorrow we're at Atherton Elementary,
Yes.
providing book packs and food and gift cards. So there's always things going on. Last night we were on a Zoom call with 300 plus small businesses from across the country that were talking about how to really scale up and really gain access to some of the capital that's out there right now.
Yes.
And being able to lead and talking to other leaders about, what that looks like. I think the important thing to do is when you go to the website, make sure that you send us a note and you say that you want to become a subscriber.
Yes.
And that way we'll put you on the constant contact list, and you'll always kind of be updated in terms of what's going on. But each department has an upcoming event almost weekly. So again, our big fundraising event, our big major event was going to be the National Urban, which was scheduled the 5th through the 8th. That was the next thing that was major on the horizon. But again, in terms of tapping in and gaining access to services and small programs that we're doing on a regular basis, go to the website. Now, in November, we will have our annual meeting. And so the annual meeting is always a great opportunity to come and hear about the accomplishments of the Urban League over the last year, to help welcome in the new board members and things of that nature, and have a great lunch as well. So, this year has been, 2020 has been a very interesting year. A lot of unexpected things have occurred to the nation and to the urban leagues all across the country. And, so we're hopeful that, we will police better in the future. We will educate our children better in the future, that we'll have more small businesses that start and are able to survive a pandemic should their revenue stream shut down for a period of time. So, we're hoping to have learned something from all these things, and that we will eventually have a resilient Houston as a result of this past 9 months.
I love that. Man, what would you like to leave with everyone and let them know what the Houston Area Urban League does and the impact that you all do?
Well, again, I think the important thing to know is that we are part of this family here in Houston. We've been around since 1910 doing this work. If more people supported and tapped into the Urban League, I truly believe that we wouldn't have some of the problems that we're facing here today. We wouldn't have as much unemployment. We wouldn't have as much homelessness. We'd have more people able to start and sustain small businesses and grow them. We'd have kids that are doing great things because our programs would be expanded. So I encourage, the public that's watching, the audience that's listening, to ensure that when they decide what can they do individually to make a difference in the life of someone else, that they consider a contribution to the Urban League, because that's what we do every day. It's like, for those of us who've lost someone to cancer, there's nothing I could volunteer for to help fight cancer that I'm aware of.
Right.
But I could write a check to the American Cancer Society, and I knew that kept those scientists working on the next, cure for the disease, and made sure that people were doing the research and all those different things and doing the treatments. So oftentimes, some of the work that needs to be done is beyond an individual's technical expertise. But when we have the technicians here at the Urban League to help ensure that someone can get a home, get a job, start a business, get better education, and stay healthy, that to me is worthy of your support.
I thank you, my friend. That's the end of the Cam Hill Show. I truly, truly appreciate you. Judson Robinson III, President and CEO of Houston Area Urban League. Thank you, my friends, for joining me. I'm on Monday through Friday 12:30 to 1:30 Central Standard Time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is the end of the Cam Hill Show on A Star TV.